2.5 years building workouts, things like that. I trained Sharon over there, one of your other coaches, so we're through the ringer. So what we're going to talk about today are aches and pains. So like I said, my background's in exercise phys, but aches and pains can happen with anything really. So what we're going to cover is what happens to muscles when you move. So if you go for a walk, up and down stairs, a bike ride, whatever the case may be, what happens to that musculature? What are movement patterns and asymmetries? The location of the pain versus what the cause of the pain is. And then of course it wouldn't be complete if we didn't go over ways to kind of correct movement patterns, improve muscle quality, and hopefully reduce the pain that you're experiencing. And then the last point we'll cover is when pain is a problem. Alright, so first up is what happens to muscles when you move. So, have you guys ever been sore?
Yes, I'm sore now.
Yeah, alright. So what's happening when you get sore? What did you do to get sore?
I did the elliptical for 30 minutes.
There you go. So, elliptical for 30 minutes. Was that the first time on the elliptical in a little while?
About 3 months or so.
Yeah, so that'll definitely do it. So she has overloaded her muscles. So what's happening? Okay, so when you perform an activity, you're putting strain on the muscles causing micro tears. Okay? As the muscle heals, it adapts, and that's how we increase mass. So being on the elliptical, that's an endurance type of training. So the muscle will adapt for endurance. Just like if you're a strength trainer, the muscle will adapt for strength. So what's happening as you're on the elliptical is you're repetitively using a muscle and it tears a little bit. Okay, so that's what's going to cause the adaptation. So the active exercise is the cause. A couple days afterwards is the effect. So you've torn that muscle, now it's going to heal. And as it heals, sometimes some scar tissue builds up in there. Okay, so now as the muscle contracts, it slides like this. Okay, so as you're on the elliptical, your muscle's going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Well, as the muscle tears, as it rebuilds, now it's gunked up. Some scar tissue's in there. It doesn't want to slide. So that muscle head is shorter, and that's what causes the soreness, because the nerve endings in that muscle fiber now are firing like crazy. They're like, whoa, something's wrong, something's wrong. So that's a normal kind of process for exercise. That's why warming up, stretching, we'll talk about foam rolling, ways to kind of get over that soreness. And that can relate to whatever it is that you're doing. All right. Now, movement patterns and asymmetries. So movement patterns are the fundamentals of movement that we learn. So does anyone in here have kids or seen little toddlers as they're walking around? Okay, so how do toddlers learn to move? I have my daughter's 3, and I kind of watched her go through this. So first thing is they learn how to, so you just lay there, and it's great for a while, because you can just set them down anywhere and they just lay there. Then, all of a sudden they learn to roll over. And now they start to roll all over the place. Okay, so what they're doing there is now they're developing rotational stability. And eventually they'll develop enough of that gosh darn rotational stability that they'll get up on all fours. Then you're in big trouble, because now they're going to start to crawl. And when they start to crawl, that's when they get into stuff. Okay? From crawling, they pull up, and from pulling up, they start to walk and move around. So that's kind of the movement progression. So, and then as we get older, we go to school, get jobs, sit, injuries happen. When injuries happen, you compensate. So, things happen to those movement patterns, so they're not as pure as they were when they were little tiny kids. So, this adorable little thing is my daughter. So she's providing us with an example of great posture and good squat form. So, how many of you, when you bend down to pick something up, still do it just like that? Nobody. Okay? But look, think about it. Think about little kids, when they bend down to pick something up, they squat right down on top of it. They don't do that, grab it and stand back up. Same thing. I know I can't, but can any of you sit on the floor with your legs straight out and your back straight up and down? Or do you have to lean back, put your hands back like this to support? Right. So we lose that hip mobility and stability and that core strength that we take 2 years to develop when we're little. Okay, so I don't know about you, but I find myself sitting like this guy a lot of times. You know, my back's rounded, my hip flexor is short. So as I stand up, all that musculature is shorter and tighter, so it pulls everything forward. So when you walk, you kind of hunch forward a little bit. Okay, so what can we do to identify? Thank you, Sharon. What can we do to identify what are our asymmetries? Well, when I was training, we would use something called the functional movement screen. Okay, so we would have our members come in, whatever their goals may be, and we would put them through this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 movements, and we would watch how they moved, where they compensated, and what could we do to correct those asymmetries and compensations. So I won't take you through all 7 movements because we're not building a workout today, but there's a few movements that you can do on your own at home that I think are really telling when it comes to identifying where you need to work. So who wants to be a volunteer? Andrea or Sharon? You two can do it because I know you two know what's going on. So first up on a functional movement screen is something called the deep squat. Okay, now what this is going to assess is, well, hip mobility and stability, trunk ability to control your trunk, and of course balance. So what I'm going to have Sharon do, and she's done this before. I've done a couple of movement screens on Sharon. So you start. You want to put your feet just about shoulder width apart. Now we of course have this nice board here. You can use a 2x4, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Okay, you're going to take a stick, could be a broomstick, whatever. Put this on top of your head, and then press it straight up. Okay, so from this starting position, you're going to drop straight down, as low as you can, and come straight back up. Okay, so ideally that's kind of the baseline. I have some of my movement issues, but that's a baseline that we look for. So if you want to watch, you can videotape yourself or have a mirror close by. So Sharon's going to press that straight up, and then drop down into a squat. Good. Now, what do you notice different about, you can relax, when Sharon did it versus when I did it? See right there. Right, so she had a little bit of trunk flexion. Ideally, you want to have hip and glute stability enough so that this bar stays over your midline, so your base of support. So now watch this. I want Sharon to put her heels up on this board, and we're going to do what's called feeding the monster. I'm going to have her press that over her head and drop straight down again. So see how much more upright she is? Okay, so that means, thank you, Sharon. That means that her hip stability is a little bit compromised. And I know she does the approach she's working right now on correcting that. So why, when I elevate her heels, was she able to then stay straight up and down? We call that feeding the monster. Okay, so imagine if you're standing here and someone's pushing you forward. You're either going to fall forward or you're going to sit back like that. Okay? So when I elevated her heels, that acts as if someone's pushing her. She's in a forward compromised position. So that makes it much easier for her body to sit back on those hips and allow her rear end to take control there. Okay, so later on we're going to discuss ways to kind of work on that, stuff you can do to help with hip stability, so on and so forth. Alright, the next one that we have is called the hurdle step. And you guys can actually do this one kind of at your chair. So after I explain it, we'll all stand up and give it a little try. Okay, so what you want to do is get something that's close to just under the knee height, anterior to God. So that little bump right under your knee, about that high. So on Sharon, hers is about 15.5. So you'll want to find something close to that height. We're going to use your chairs because you'll get the idea. For this one, you're just going to rest a bar on the back of your neck. You guys are just going to put your hands on the back of your neck. Feet together. You're going to step up over the string, tap the floor, come back and down. Perfect. Up and over. Tap your heel to the floor, back and down to the other side. Good. Perfect. All right, now I want everyone to stand up, pull their chairs out. Face your chair so your knees up against it. If you got heels on, you might want to take those off. If you're daring, you can stand on them. So, what I want you to do is put the pad of the chair right up against your knees. So turn so you're facing it. Okay? So that should be about knee height for almost everyone. I want you to put your hands on the back of your head. And now step back just a touch. And I want you to bring your foot, right or left, up and try and get the bottom of your shoe on top of that chair. And then come straight back down. Good. Alright, you can have a seat. So, when you did that, did you find yourself really wanting to look down at the chair, see where this thing was? Did you find yourself maybe coming up like this, going a little bit wide, and then coming around on top? Okay, so what this is looking for is one, proprioception, which means knowing how your body is moving in space. So understanding where the height of the chair is, where the string's at, and how you can get your foot up over it. The other one that we're looking for is, do you stay straight up and tall, or do you not have the hip stability or strength so that you kind of lean out to the side? You know, my wife, I'm always getting onto her because she's, of course, holding the child, and I'm criticizing the way she's holding the child. She gets it on her hip, and she's standing like this. So basically, my daughter is just sitting on her hip. So she's just developing, you know, that weakness on this hip. And I tell her, I was like, you keep doing that, you're just going to start walking like this everywhere you go. And then she yells at me, and we move on to something else. But no, in all seriousness, when you hinge out, you're not relying on your hips to hold you up. And what does that translate to? Well, probably knee pain. So if you're walking around, you know, you're at the mall, you're going up and down the steps, you notice knee pain, especially coming downstairs, probably has something to do with your hips, most likely. Okay? So the last one, or actually we're going to do two more. The next one is called shoulder mobility. And real quick, an easy tell for this one is if you take your arms out like this, and you reach behind, you should be able to pretty much touch your fingers together behind your back. Yeah. Excellent. So Sharon kind of overlapping. Now, here's the trick. Can you do it on the other side? Alright, so I'm going to demonstrate for you what a shoulder asymmetry looks like. So here's this side. The top hand is what we're looking at here. Okay, so when I'm here, okay, I can touch. Now observe there. Okay, so that's a big asymmetry. So if I'm going out, I'm playing baseball, or I'm playing basketball, or frisbee, or whatever, if I'm doing repetitive motions like that on each side, is my risk higher for injury because I'm not symmetrical on both sides? Most definitely it is. So I have to take extra time to warm up, make sure my left shoulder is equally increased mobility a little bit before I perform that activity. Otherwise, the compensation will occur, muscle does what it's not supposed to do, and that results in a trip to the emergency room. So we want to avoid those at all costs. Now, there's other movements that we could go over, but those are really the ones that I like for just kind of at-home use on your own, assessing your own kind of movement and mobility. All right, so from here, let's go ahead and talk about, thank you, the cause of pain, the location versus the cause of the pain. And then we'll discuss, kind of what to do about those things. Okay? So common places we experience, who in here has had neck pain? Who in here has had back pain? Who in here has had knee pain? Absolutely. Those are very common places. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that is the location of, or the source of that problem. Okay, so unless you've had, so if you got a bulging disc, obviously we can identify that as the source of the pain. It's right there. That disc is not supposed to be like that. But just generalized achiness and soreness doesn't always come from where the pain is at. And think of it like this. Let's say someone's tied a rope around your waist. Okay, and they're behind you, and they're pulling on that rope. Okay, it's hurting your stomach a little bit. There's nothing you can really do to the rope at your stomach to relieve the pain. because the source is the jerk behind you pulling on the rope. So you got to get the source of the pain to stop pulling on the rope, so the site of the pain goes away. Okay. Now, a common thing with knee pain. Okay, so if you have poor hip mobility, or in my example here, I think I said, you roll your ankle. Has anyone ever rolled an ankle? Hurts like crazy. What do you do after you roll an ankle?
Yeah.
You limp around, right? So instead of walking normally, you're hobbling around on that because your body hates pain. Your brain does not like pain, so it's going to work around any way possible so that it doesn't have to feel that. So if that means limping, that's what you're going to end up doing. Now, how many of you have limped for a while, your ankles start to feel better, but all of a sudden now your hip kind of hurts, or your knee's a little sore on the other side, right? That's because it's not that there's an injury there, it's just that now that your ankle's healing up, your gait's going back to normal, but you've been compensating for so long that now you kind of developed a little bit of inflammation, if you will. Okay? So that's what I mean by, if you go, a lot of good chiropractors especially will be constantly telling you, and it sounds funny at the time, you go in and your knee hurts and they're like, well, actually, your neck's out of place. Or, oh, my neck hurts, well, actually, your ankle's not looking too good. Okay, so it means something. He's not just pulling your leg. There's actually, validity to that. Well, actually, yes.
Yeah.
Literally, he is pulling your leg.
Yeah.
Figuratively, he's not just telling a story. So you can go ahead and click forward there. Now, what can we do to correct patterns and asymmetries? Okay. The first thing that I like to have clients do is foam roll. Has anyone in here heard of foam rolling? Okay, have you? All right. Think of foam rolling. Well, let me preface this. If you can afford to go get a massage 3 or 4 times a week, that's better than foam rolling. Foam rolling is like a quick version of a massage. What you're doing is you're taking something like this, and it doesn't have to be foam roller. I mean, all this is a PVC pipe wrapped in soft foam. So, I mean, if you've got a PVC pipe, wrap a towel around it, put tape in the ends middle, you're good to go. I mean, all you're doing is finding something hard to put pressure on that musculature. And you remember the scar tissue that we were talking about earlier? What a foam roller does is it goes in, and that scar tissue that's gumped in, you're going to put pressure right on it, and it's going to break it up. It's going to allow the blood flow to get in there. So now it's going to wash away some of that extra collagen, and your muscle's going to be able to work properly again. Okay? So you can put this anywhere. I like to hit, my IT bands, my quads, my glutes. You can put it anywhere you can put pressure, you can foam roll. And it doesn't feel very good. I mean, when you hit a spot and it shoots pain right down there, that's where you want to sit. Okay? It's called a roller, but you don't actually roll on it. All you want to do is slowly move down the musculature, find a spot where you go, whoa, and then just sit on it. Try and relax that muscle into it, hold it for about 30 seconds, then move on down to the next one. Okay? So you're going to move the whole length of it. And you're just putting your body weight on it. So if I'm, give a little example. So if I'm foam rolling here, I put it up on my hip, okay, so I'm rolling down, it's just body weight. So if I want more body weight, I can put my leg over on top of it. If I want less body weight, I can put my knee down on the floor. Okay, so I can control the amount of pressure that's actually going into that musculature. Okay? So you put it on there, sit, move on down to the next one. Okay? After foam roll, so I like to foam roll first. There's articles all over the place on what to do in regards to stretching. Do you stretch before? Do you stretch after? Okay, I'm going to give you my philosophy. So I think of it like this. I want to foam roll before, because if I've got a muscle that's tight, it's got collagen built up in it, and it's like this, I don't want to stretch on that and just pull it. I want to break up the tissue and then stretch a healthy, clean muscle. So you're elongating a good fiber instead of just pulling on a tight scar tissue, collagen rep fiber. Does that make sense? So that's my philosophy. If I'm tight, I'll foam roll for about 3 or 4 minutes, stretch for about 3 or 4 minutes, and then I'll work on some activation or muscle stabilization. Okay, so that's my three things. So we're going to foam roll, then we stretch, then we activate stabilizing muscles. Now, this seems like a, when we talk about it in a 45-minute presentation, it seems like, it would take forever. We're talking 5 minutes here. Okay, so maybe it's at night before you go to bed, maybe it's in the morning after you wake up, feeling a little tight, foam roll, stretch, do a couple little core stabilization things, get in the shower, go on about your day. It doesn't have to be something that you got to change into your gym clothes, you got to get your water bottle. No, it's just quick. Something that you can do on the spot. You can go ahead and click the next one. So, here's what I like to do as a way to do regeneration for the neck. So, remember I had some neck pain? Here are 3 things that if you were to come to me and say, hey, my neck's feeling a little tight today, here's what I'm going to have you do. The first thing I'm going to have you do is foam roll your thoracic spine, which is upper back. Okay? Joints alternate in their function. Ankle is a mobile joint. I can get my foot all over the place. The knee is a stable joint. Okay, I don't want my knee cranking out this way or cranking out that way. Hips are mobile. Low back is stable. Thoracic spine is mobile. So your thoracic spine should have some mobility. That's a normal thing. So what we're going to do is put the foam roller, this is a popular one, you put it right, I like to start at the base, kind of right, you'll know you don't want to get all the way to the bottom of your ribs, because that won't feel too good. But right down there at the base of your ribs, and you slowly roll. I like to go up 2, down 1. You just work your way up your upper back. You'll probably get a few cracks in there. And same concept. If you feel a tight spot or a knot, like if you're rolling along and all of a sudden this side like comes up because you got a knot there, stop and kind of exhale and kind of put pressure down into that spot. It's take about 30 seconds to just work, up your thoracic spine. Okay? Trigger point is the same thing as foam rolling, but it's with a ball. So if I'm foam rolling here and I'm going up my back and I feel a tight spot but I just can't get to it, what I would do is take a tennis ball, and this says trigger point ball, but it's basically a lacrosse ball or a tennis ball, and I put it right on that knot, and same thing, body weight push down into it. It's much more local. So the foam roller is the global modality, the trigger point ball is the local modality. So broad space, narrow space. Okay, so I'll take that trigger point ball, and you want to hit these upper traps. Okay, people, whether it's exercise or really now that I've been health coaching, I've found out that everyone carries their stress right here. I mean, everyone who comes in, they're almost like, and I'm going to poke their fingers, so they're really like, oh. Even on something little like that. So trigger pointing that trapezius muscle, which is just right here on the top of your shoulder. Okay, even just standing here, pushing on it feels really good. I mean, you can just find that muscle, find a tight spot, push down. You can almost feel it kind of relaxing around your neck. Your head kind of gives way a little bit. So that's going to be really important with regards to the neck. Because if you're tense, your shoulder, that's a big muscle. That muscle is designed to move stuff. It's designed to pull stuff up, bring stuff back. So if it's overacting, all that small musculature underneath there that's actually supposed to stabilize, it's having trouble. It's just shut off. Because your neck is so stiff from that trap muscle, it doesn't have to do anything. So it becomes weak, and we need to turn that back on. So first step to that is relaxing that trap muscle. Okay? My last one, this is in my top 5 favorite stretches. Okay, so if you're ever neck sore, back sore, whatever, we're going to do what's called a 90-90 stretch. Okay? And to demonstrate, and you'll see why it's called 90-90 here in a second, you're going to get your legs, you're just going to lay on your side, legs are at 90 degrees, torso's at 90 degrees. Okay, so from here, I'm going to take my bottom arm, palm face up. I'm going to stack my shoulders. I don't want to be back like this or forward like this yet. Okay, so I'm going to put my hand right on top of there. Then I am going to rotate. I'm going to rotate forward. I'm going to reach as far as I can. And then I'm going to open, keep my knees down, and then push that shoulder to the floor. Okay, relax your head. Now this is an important part, because a lot of you will be able to just go like that. Okay, but now my knees come up, I'm just stretching this front part of my shoulder. What we want to focus on is the back. So you can even, if you want to, hold your knees down, follow that hand with your eyes, and instead of thinking your hand needs to touch the floor, think about your shoulder trying to touch the floor. So really exhale and push that shoulder down into the floor. Then come back and do the same thing. So you want to repeat that, 5 times, taking your time. I see people working out. The first day they come in, they're real into it. By the 3rd month, it becomes, all right, I'm good. Let's go. Okay, so really take your time and get the benefit of doing the stretch. Okay. So regeneration for the low back. I'm big into this one right now. I was doing deadlifts the other day, and for some reason I decided I needed to deadlift heavy. And I go home, and I told my wife, I'm like, guess how much I deadlifted? And I tell her, and she goes, why? I don't know, but my back hurts a little bit. So I've been taking a lot of time focusing on kind of regeneration, sitting back. I always want to do more, but in reality, you get more benefit from doing less and doing quality. Okay, I think that pretty much applies to anything. Okay, so again, you're going to notice some similarities here. We're going to foam roll the upper back. We're going to foam roll the glutes, the hip flexors, and then we're going to stretch the hip flexors, stretch the glutes, and then plank. Okay, so there's a progression here. Foam roll first, stretch second, movement mastery here. So the 2 big causes that I see of non-injury related pain in the low back come from poor mobility in the hips and thoracic spine, as well as, weak, deep abdominals. So we're going to train, say we're going to do an exercise and we're going to train the core. Name an exercise for the core.
Crunches.
Right here. Got any exercises for right here?
I usually do aerobics things.
Oh, that's actually really, really good. Do you have anyone? Normally people say crunches. Okay? Aerobics and dance kind of surprised me because that's actually really good core work as well as metabolic. This movement, it came from the rectus abdominis, so that's the 6-pack. Everyone wants a 6-pack. So everyone does this all day long, okay? That's fine, but the trunk's not necessarily designed for trunk flexion, okay? It's designed to stabilize the spine. And you don't walk around like this all the time. You walk around upright, nice and tall. I mean, some people kind of do walk around like this. Stand upright, tall. So we want to do things that support that movement while we're standing. A plank hold is excellent. So if I'm putting together something that we would call core work, it's not 8-minute abs. That's the thing. If you turn on TV, the fitness industry is trying to sell you something. Whether it's abs, whether it's a quick fix, whether it's a P90X. I'm not saying any of that garbage, but they ask a whole lot of money for it, and it's really, at the end of the day, pretty common sense stuff. Okay? And it's also catering to a large population of people who want a quick fix and they want it now. That's not necessarily the case. Quick fixes usually become quick trips back to the way you were before. Okay? So, by doing core work from this base. Okay, so a plank. What is a plank? Okay, exactly like she's holding it there. We're going to press our elbows into the floor, pick our hips up, try and maintain a nice straight back. If you have a mirror, that's even better. Because right now, I have a hard time separating my shoulders, so I tend to round out in my upper back. So if I have a mirror, I can flatten it out a little bit better. Okay, what that does is it trains your core to stabilize. Now, once you can do that for 90 seconds, that's considered good core strength. So where do you go from there? Okay, so now we can do it really well. We're doing a plank. let's pick up one arm and put it back down. Okay, so now we've got a rotational aspect. And how do you progress? You can start with your knees down. Okay, and then you can go to knees up. And then you can go to knees down and raise your arm. Then you can go to knees up and raise your arm. Okay, again, this doesn't take very long. You could throw this in for no. If there's anything I would have every person in the world do, it'll be to wake up or go to bed, foam roll, do 3 or 4 stretches, and 3 or 4 different plank variations. I think that that would solve, it would reduce a lot of the aches and pains that people have. I mean, if I could solve everything, I'd be really rich. But it definitely helps to reduce some of the problems. Okay? So we've talked about the foam rolling. You put the foam roller on the specific body part, move it back and forth. Stretching. So stretching the hip flexor. You get one knee down, you sit up nice and tall. Okay? So you want to put this front foot out just a little bit. So when you're sitting tall, you move forward. Now we're stretching this muscle right here. Okay? That's a big one when it comes to low back pain. Because right now you guys are sitting. So this muscle, which connects down, is actually short. So if you spend a lot of time sitting, it stays short. So when you stand up, what does it do to your hips? Pulls them forward. So low back pain is oftentimes associated with your weaker glutes and overactive hip flexors and quads. Okay? So your hips forward, if you stretch them, hips rotate back. It allows those erectors spinae to kind of relax and your low back feels better. Okay, the other one there is a glute stretch. You can do it on the floor, but essentially you're going to stand up, pull like this. Okay, if you're having trouble balancing, a lot of times that's a tough stretch to do at first, so you'll end up spending more time trying to stand up than actually stretch. Okay, you can find a table, could be a coffee table, it doesn't matter, whatever height you can find. You just put your leg up on it, same thing. Okay, or if you can't find something of that height, you can lay down and pull here. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of ways to get to where you want to go. Any questions about any of this stuff?
You'll be sending this out to us after.
It'll be on the
We'll send you the PowerPoint,
Yep.
Okay.
and then we'll also put it on the website.
Yep, okay, you can click there. All right, now the last one we have is regeneration for the knee. So basically you can see we just added on, kind of from top to bottom, what we've been talking about. Okay, so we've got foam roll the hip flexors, quads, IT bands, the glutes, the hamstrings, calves, and then we're going to stretch. And this is important. This is some of the movement stuff that I wanted to get to. It's called, kind of reinforcing some of the patterns that we've learned. Now, we foam roll first. We've got a couple of new ones up there. A lot of times, you've all kind of raised your hand for knee pain, right? So, as long as it's not like bone on bone type of thing, there are ways to kind of help alleviate some of that inflammation, especially if you're planning on going for a walk, or you're going to be out and about for that day. There are ways to kind of reduce the inflammation that you have. First off is to foam roll these IT bands right here. Okay, there's a tendon that runs basically from right here all the way down the side of your leg, right underneath your knee. And this thing is probably the most problematic that I ever come across. By problematic, I mean it's just tight. And it causes pain kind of right under the kneecap. And you'll know your IT band is kind of tight if you're going down the stairs or down a hill, and it feels like just a stabbing pain behind your knee. Most likely that's kind of the tight IT band issue, and if you foam roll it or put pressure on it, or just drive your hand down the side, or anything you can do to find those tight spots in the IT band and put pressure on them will help alleviate that. The other thing that can possibly happen is called patellar tracking, where as you walk, your patella doesn't sit right in that groove there, so your patella is your kneecap. So it sits in a groove, and every time you bend it, it should go right in that groove. Well, if the vastus lateralis or the vastus medialis aren't working properly together, one of the muscles is a little stronger, it can pull that patella off to the side a little bit. And it's nothing you would notice. I mean, you could be standing there and not notice this happening. But if you were to go move around, you might notice that your knee starts to hurt. Well, what's happening is that patella is just rubbing a little bit, and that creates inflammation. So kind of working around those things to help improve little stuff like that can take care of some of those aches and pains. All right, now, I want to talk, because we've talked quite a bit about stretching and foam rolling. I want to talk about some of this movement stuff. So Sharon was doing her movement screen earlier. She had a little bit of trunk flexion, a little bit of proprioception on the hurdle step, so on and so forth. So what are things you can do to correct that? Okay, so we've loosened up the muscles. We've got our movement, our muscle quality is really good. But I hear this a lot of times from physicians, everything. Oh, your low back's sore, or your knee's sore, you need to strengthen this, or you need to strengthen that. I'm weak in this area. That's partially true, but I like to think of it as a hardware, software type of thing. Have you ever seen a big bodybuilder muscle step up and try and swing a bat? Sometimes they're the worst ones to pick because they have no coordination. Okay, so what they do is they isolate a muscle group, they overtrain it. So the biceps, so pump up the biceps and the triceps. Pump them. Okay, so we're working those up, but all we've done is improve the hardware. Okay, your brain is the software. Your brain is what tells that muscle what to do. So I've got the biggest biceps in the world, but when it comes to a multi-linear or multi-plane, multi-joint movement, I'm kind of lost because I've been busy doing this all the time. Okay, so when it comes to doing something like this, I'm like, I don't know what to do. Okay, so that's why movement mastery or movement patterning is so important. So teaching yourself how to do these things. So first one was the deep squat. Okay, so we got trunk flexion, we're coming forward. So there's two things that I'm going to do with Sharon. Okay, first we're going to take, like he's got some boxes right here. You're going to set those up as high as you need to. Okay, it doesn't have to be one box, it doesn't have to be two boxes. This isn't an intensity type of thing. This is a neuromuscular type of thing. We're relearning. Okay, so we're going to set this up. You're going to come, hands up, you're going to come down, put your hands on the box. Okay, so from here, your back should be pretty flat. You're sitting up pretty tall. You're just going to drop elbows inside the knees, down as low as you can go. Okay, so from here, you can use that box a little bit to help you stay up. So if you want to fall back, you can use the box to help stabilize. All we're doing is trying to turn on those muscles again. Okay, so you're going to do that a few times. Okay, so from here, now we're going to drop down, bring up one arm, bring up the other arm, and stand up. Okay, so what we're doing is we're trying to retrain those tiny muscles in the hips that are not doing anything, they're on vacation, trying to retrain them to turn back on so that our big muscles can do what they're supposed to do. Every time I have when I was training, there'd always be an athlete or a jock or just some guy who thought he was hot stuff come in. And he would say, what can you do for me? I can already lift a truck. What can you possibly tell me? And so the first thing I would do is we have these little mini bands. I'm sure you've seen them at the sporting goods stores, just a rubber band essentially, that they've decided to sell for $19.95. But what I would say I'd do is I'd put that band around his knees, and I'd have him do just little tiny steps like this. He'd make it about that far, couldn't do anything else. Okay? What's happened is he's overtrained his major muscle groups so much that they're doing everything. So his quad is holding his hips in place, his glutes are doing way too much. And I tell him, I say, you're strong, but you could be a whole lot stronger if your muscles that are lifting weight didn't also have to hold everything in place. If we could turn on those small muscle groups so that they're holding everything where it needs to be, your big muscles can do what they're supposed to do. I mean, that sounds a little bit like, you ever felt like that in the workplace? Like, man, if that lady over there would do her job, I wouldn't have to do near as much. Okay, so it's like, just like in everything, you want to get everything working together accordingly. Does that make sense? Good. All right, so once we've got this, the next thing that I would have you do is called the inverted hamstring stretch. Okay? These are probably my two favorite things to have people do. Now, the inverted hamstring stretch, if you're doing it by yourself, initially I would always use a little stick and try and have a mirror somewhere so you can see yourself. Because what you're going to do, you're going to start to train those hips to move independently and control themselves. Okay, so if I'm right here, I'm just going to drive that heel back. I want to keep a straight line from the head out through my base. Okay, what that's doing is stretching the hamstring a little bit. Okay, but what's going to happen is your first time, you're going to go like this. Then you're going to fall a little bit. Okay, because your hips want to open. Okay, you're not hitting the right musculature there. So what we're going to do, look in the mirror, and the key is drag your toe on the floor as long as possible, then pick it up and really drive that heel back. Now, she's going pretty straight there. I mean, that's pretty impressive, just turning yourself into a T. Most of the time, what this is going to look like is very small, about like this. And back up. And back up. Once you get that perfect, then you can work on really pushing back and trying to get that stretch. But what we're really trying to do is tell the hips how to stand on one foot. And if you really want to trick your hips, do it while standing on a board. Because now, even though you're an inch off the ground, your brain's like, we're going to fall! So you got to really get going. So doing it on the board allows you extra proprioception. That's going to fire those small muscle groups you put. Go ahead and click there. All right, now when pain is a problem, I want to just reiterate the fact that the type of pain we're talking about today is not if, you're walking along and something banks into your leg and now your leg hurts. That's different. That means you need to go somewhere. So if you have, pain that's very specific, you know exactly what caused the pain, that's when you go to a physician and you get MRI, x-rays, whatever the case may be. The type of pain that we're talking about is that pain that kind of, you don't have it, and you start walking along, and it starts to show up. It comes from movement, it comes from inflammation, it's just nagging, it's been with you for a while. That's the type of pain that we're talking about. And I can't promise you that it'll get rid of it, but these are the steps that I would take to help relieve some of it. So here's some of the things. So, yeah, this is an exaggeration. So if you ran 10 miles and can't walk, that's obviously soreness. So that's foam rolling that we want to take out. Lastly, the bottom line is probably the most important thing, and really what I want people to take away from this is there's a lot of biggest loser syndrome, I like to call it, where people get caught up in what it is to be active, what it means to be fit, and in my personal opinion, that greatly differs from reality. Okay, a lot of the stuff that you see on TV or in sports comes from people training for something. I mean, a basketball player works out 2 hours a day because he's paid millions of dollars and he has a very specific in nature thing that he needs to accomplish. Whereas in general, maybe you're gardening, maybe you enjoy building things, maybe you just enjoy going for a walk every now and then. All those things are perfectly appropriate, perfectly fine, but these aches and pains can still happen. What we want to do is take stuff that we enjoy doing for activity, doesn't have to be going to the gym and pumping iron, something that we enjoy doing, keeping it enjoyable and not something that we kind of dread doing because we know we're going to be sore from it. Does that make sense? All right, I think the next one is if there's any questions about anything. Any questions at all? I'm a wealth of knowledge.
So often I walk every morning, and often, every once in a while, my knee, it just starts getting stiffer. I don't know, is that because I'm not walking correctly, probably? And then I'll just say I'm going to keep walking.
Right.
I mean, it's stiffer when I first move it, and then after I move it a while, it's all right.
Yep.
I keep on going and keep on doing it. Is that because I'm not walking straight, probably, or is because part of the muscles aren't?
There's a lot of. We have 45 minutes, so there's a lot of things that can go into it. Are you walking on the road?
I'm walking on a walking trail.
Okay.
So it's asphalt paved, but it's a walking trail.
Right. So most likely, I would say that either you got a little, not walking wrong, but there's something along the way, could have been 20 years ago, that is just kind of causing you limp. And what I would do is work on some of those stretches. If you don't have a foam roller, just do some of those. Take about 2 or 3 minutes before you start. See if that makes any improvement. I mean, whether or not we're actually treating what's the problem, it will help you improve just off the fact that you told me as you get going, it gets better. So naturally, if you spend 5 minutes moving around before you start moving around, you're just getting it quickly.
And it always happens to my right knee.
Yeah. So,
And my left knee, 20-some years ago, I broke my left, I broke this leg.
yep.
So I didn't know if this one
Yeah.
is favored.
I would all but guarantee, without actually watching your gait or looking at stuff, I almost guarantee you've still got a remnants of a limp, and you're just getting a little inflammation in there. And the reason it starts to feel better as the more you walk, the more blood flow you get going into the knee, and it kind of clears it out. Does it hurt after you get done?
It doesn't for a little, after I sit for a while,
It
it'll get
stiffens
stiff,
up.
it'll
Yep.
get stiff again.
Yep. I would start taking time, before and after doing, whether it's foam rolling, or you can just, if you got a rolling pin, you can take a rolling pin and just kind of work down your legs to kind of help that musculature a little bit. And the other thing I would do is, some of that core work as well, just to help, with overall stability in the hips. So I would try those 2 things, and then Sharon's have you met with Sharon, your health coach yet? So Sharon and I are pretty close. So if you have questions, specifically, if she doesn't know the answer, she can always
I
ask
always
me.
grab
So
you.
yeah, she grabs me quite often, and yeah, we can definitely work through if you notice improvement with that or not. Sound good?
I like all this stuff. It's a little more to take in.
Right.
It's a good idea, but to actually
Right.
take it in practice from just watching it.
No, yeah, it's the hardest thing to do, and for the longest time, I put it off. I mean, at my house, I have a department store worth of stuff, and I work out, and I go home, and I know I need to stretch, I know I need to do this stuff. I sit down, America's Got Talent is on, and then it's 10 o'clock, because the last act was awesome. So I'm not going downstairs now. I mean, in my head, I know it's only 5 minutes, but I'm like, nah, I'm just gonna go. But if it's really something that you want to try, I would say 5 minutes at least 4 times a week to try and notice some sort of results that way. And it can be, you can technically do it right before you go for your walk. I mean, anything you need minimal equipment. It's just more making it part of that routine. Once it's there, it's there. But getting it there is the hard part. Any other questions? Yeah?
After a workout and you're going to be really sore, if you foam roll, how much quicker will it cause you not to be sore?
That's really dependent on the person. It will, I think, take some time off of the soreness just because post-workout you're kind of breaking down the fiber, increasing that blood flow. You will still be sore. I mean, you're working out some fibers and stuff. But typically, if you notice any joint pain, I would ice it. If it's really bad, maybe a little bit of Advil, ibuprofen type of thing. But try and stay away from that as much as possible. It just takes generally about 2 or 3 days, and you'll be back on track. The best thing you can do is get right back in on the elliptical. Take the time to do your movement, your stretching, your foam rolling, and get right back on that elliptical and get going again. Because that's going to get more blood flow in there, it's going to clear out the lactic acid, and that's really what I think tends to take the most time off of being sore, is continuing to be active throughout it. Any other questions? All right, you guys have been a great audience. It's kind of nice having a small little group to talk to. It's a little different, but I like it. Hope you guys